Welcome to the Jenna Ellis Show, sponsored by Legacy Precious Metals. There has never been a better time to invest in precious metals. Visit legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com.
On Jenna Ellis Tonight, it's a special Republican National Convention edition. The RNC continues in Milwaukee. Tonight's theme, Make America Strong once again. Delegates and viewers hear arguments that President Biden is a weak and failed commander-in-chief. The highlight of the night, Trump's freshly chosen running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, taking to the podium to address the convention. We'll carry the vice presidential candidate's speech live whenever he takes the stage. This after last night's powerful Make America Safe Once Again theme, the convention featuring speaker after speaker who lost loved ones to fentanyl at the hands of illegal migrants, blaming soft-on-crime prosecutors for the rise in crime. Also last night, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and others endorsing the former president. Be sure to tune in to Jenna Ellis Tonight on Salem News Channel.
My fellow Americans, we are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been an absolute disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a consistent issue, and high interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market. There have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East that have the potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even amid the tensions. There are so many reasons that Americans just like you and me should consider investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero-hassle, education-first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. Go to legacypminvestments.com, that's legacypminvestments.com, to download their free gold investing guide. I've read it, and there is so much valuable information there. Friends, now is not the time to roll the dice with your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that gold offers you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals today and tell them that I sent you.
Hello and welcome to a special Republican National Convention edition of Jenna Ellis Tonight. My name is Ken Rosato. I'll be filling in for Jenna. I spent over 3 decades working in mainstream media. I worked as a TV news anchor in New York City and Miami, literally working for all 4 of the so-called 3-letter networks. And I know exactly what they think, how they think, and why. And it's certainly a pleasure to share my views with you tonight. So let's dive right in. The Republican National Convention continues in Milwaukee, and we want to point out to you that Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance will speak tonight. When he does, we will carry his speech live. Tonight's theme, Make America Strong Once Again. Delegates and viewers hear arguments that President Biden is a weak and failed commander-in-chief. The highlight of the night, Trump's freshly chosen running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. He'll take to the podium to formally accept his party's nomination, and he will address the convention. This after last night's powerful Make America Safe Once Again theme. The convention featured speaker after speaker who lost loved ones to fentanyl or at the hands of illegal migrants, blaming soft-on-crime prosecutors for the rise in crime.
And in a moment of peer pressure, he tried something that someone gave to him, and it took my baby's life. We did everything right. I had those conversations with him, and fentanyl still found my son. And on February 27th, 2022, our lives were shattered, and our baby was gone. This was not an overdose, it was a poisoning. His whole future, everything we ever wanted for him was ripped away in an instant. And Joe Biden does nothing.
So very sad. Also, last night, former GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley firmly endorsed Trump for president, releasing her delegates, urging unity and asking her supporters to vote for Trump in November. Another major GOP opponent, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, also charged up the crowd, making sure they knew that he was firmly supporting the former president.
My fellow Republicans, let's send Joe Biden back to his basement and let's send Donald Trump back to the White House. Life was more affordable when Donald Trump was president. Our border was safer under the Trump administration, and our country was respected when Donald Trump was our commander-in-chief.
And joining me now is Auron MacIntyre from The Blaze to talk more about the convention. Auron, thanks for joining us again. And how do you feel the convention's moving along so far?
Well, last night was strong. It was good to see people like Ron DeSantis get on stage and after a very vigorous primary that often had a lot of sour grapes, be willing to get up there and unify the party after everything that has happened to Donald Trump. Clearly, this is the moment to go ahead and do that. It was great to see him step up in that moment. Vivek Ramaswamy also doing well on stage. And of course, the powerful stories of all of those who had loved ones lost. It's incredibly important to put a human face on these numbers. So often the people who are ravaged by the open borders policy and soft on crime policies of the left are simply counted as statistics. But to see those people in real life telling their stories is critical for people to understand the importance of Trump's agenda coming into the White House.
There was one mother who was specifically talking about her son who served in Afghanistan, survived being shot at multiple times in Afghanistan, only to come back to the streets of New York City and to be killed in New York shortly after arriving back. What she talked about, though, wasn't even so much the fact that her son was killed in New York, but so much as the soft on crime policies in the sanctuary city that is New York, and the prosecutor in the city of New York who simply doesn't want to prosecute crime, in fact, deciding to drop some of the charges against some of the people who killed her son. So this was an especially poignant moment. Did you catch that point last night?
I didn't see that particular one, but it is important to understand that all of the policies that we are talking about, of course, have very serious consequences in real life. They are incredibly threatening to the people who live in cities like New York. We already know that Daniel Penny, the gentleman who attempted to protect the lives of the people on his subway from a crazed man, is facing serious charges because of his action. So even protecting yourself in a city like New York is a criminal offense. So yes, how insane and tragic that someone who is willing to go and defend our country on a regular basis, put his life on the line in a foreign country, in a war zone on a regular basis, survives all of that, and then faces the consequence of leftist policies in what should be one of the safest cities in the world. It's a tragedy, and it's a tragedy that is created on purpose by left-wing policy.
Do you think that the Republicans are in the situation that they are today because finally mainstream media, who's been basically turning a blind eye to all the criminality that's happening in the American cities, both because of prosecutors who decided not to prosecute crime. Basically, everything's on its head. If you're a criminal, you commit a crime, we won't prosecute you. But if you're a guy like the former president, we'll create crimes. We'll make them up and go after you. We'll hobble them together to put you in jail, whether you actually committed a crime or not. The fact that this has been going on now for several years, and people who live in the inner city, in the so-called sanctuary cities around America, are seeing crime rise, yet prosecutors aren't prosecuting. So the fake statistics they're giving is showing that crime is decreasing when everybody with eyes knows it's not. Do you think finally this is what's catching up to the Democrat Party today, and this is why they're finding themselves behind in the polls in cities and states that they normally counted on for Democrat support?
Oh, absolutely. This is the consequence of living in a late stage Soviet style country where you have official organs that are supposed to exist for the protection of the people, the collection of data, understanding what's going on. And instead, every one of those organizations is impossible. It's impossible for them to be objective because they are completely possessed by the ideological zeitgeist of the ruling party. these institutions are not keeping track of crime. They're not enforcing the law. They're not giving us a realistic picture of what's going on. We are obviously not getting real reports from the media. And everyone can see that. Even those who are constantly being propagandized by the left are slowly starting to realize that the situation they're in simply does not map on to what's being presented to them by the media, and they are breaking in record numbers away from the Democrats.
And Auron, I worked in newsrooms owned by ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. I worked in all of their newsrooms at various times in my career, 30 plus years. And it's not so much an organized effort at the top, so much as it is newsrooms filled with 20-somethings who all come from the same background. They all live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. They're in the same little bubble. They all went to the same journalism schools. They all talk the same language. They all go to the same bars and hang out and drink and talk. So they're all of the same political ilk. And when they sit down to put together a newscast, to write a story, they end up writing the same story from the same angle. And they don't consider it left wing. They consider this what everybody thinks because they surround themselves in a universe of people who are so far to the left that anyone to the right of Mao Zedong is viewed as a Nazi. And this is what I encountered for 30 plus years. I could recall many times, Auron, that I would say in morning meetings, and this is at all of the stations, by the way, I'm not singling anyone out. I would say, can we not do 7 anti-Trump stories and 1 pro-Biden story? Can we somehow balance it out just a little bit? And they would look at me like I had 3 heads. But this is the universe that they come from. And they start out with their marching orders from whatever the New York Times is publishing that morning. That's the angle we're going to go at. You could have 700 wonderful things that Trump did, but no, we'll find the one thing to attack him on, and that's what we'll seize on. But I think, as you said, I think finally people are seeing through that because I think mass media is dying. And social media is rising. And so the conservative voice is finally peeking through. What say you?
No, I think that's exactly right, Ken. I didn't have the extensive experience you did, but I also worked in local journalism for a number of years, and I had the exact same experience. No one in the room was explicitly saying, this is what we've got. These are the orders top down. We have to have this bias. But it was simply understood that everyone shared the same opinion. They all went to the same journalism schools. They all traveled in the same circles. And so it was basically this kind of underlying order that we needed to go after Donald Trump at every moment. And I explain this in my book, The Total State. I talk about that experience and how we end up with this network cultural effect, even though there's no top-down coordinating agency to tell us what the press should believe. They all share the same progressive, secular, humanist, Democrat mindset, and that's what they bring to the table anytime they're trying to write a story or cover a story.
And Auron, do you think the Republicans are finding themselves in a sort of a unique position they're not used to? Because if you think about it, usually at this stage of the game, with the exception of, and you're too young to remember this, Ronald Reagan in 1983, 84, that's the last time I could remember the Republicans this organized and this far ahead of the game at this stage. I think the Republicans are used to being behind and struggling and then holding the football and having somebody run up to kick it and then the football getting released at the last minute, like in Snoopy, or Peanuts, I should say. I think that the Republicans are not usually used to winning. So with 10 seconds, what do you think? Do you think they know how to carry the ball and take it to the end?
They absolutely have to learn. The goal has shifted. Instead of just winning by a few percentage points, we need to see a massive Nixon second-term style blowout across the country.
All right, Auron, thank you so much. We're going to check back with you a little later in the show on this special Republican National Convention edition of Jenna Ellis Tonight. Once again, Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance is expected to take the stage this evening. When he does, we will carry his speech live right on Salem News Channel. In the meantime, U.S. intelligence agencies uncover an Iranian plot to assassinate former President Trump, apparently unrelated to last weekend's homegrown attempt. Former Texas GOP Chair Allen West is going to be joining us here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Do not go anywhere. We're coming right back here on Salem News Channel.
Well, friends, you might have heard that Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of their box stores or shopping channels the way that they used to. They've been part of this cancel culture, so they want to pass along the savings directly to you by having a $25 extravaganza. I love that word, extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just a one-product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products, some you may not even know about. To get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out their $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use My Pillows are just $25. My Pillow sandals, also awesome, only $25. Their 6-pack towel sets are $25. And brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, just $25. For the first time ever, the premium My Pillows with the all-new Giza fabric, just $25. And orders over $75 will receive free shipping too. This amazing offer won't last long. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Jenna, or call 800-564-8475 today. That's 800-564-8475, or go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Jenna.
And welcome back to a special Republican National Convention edition of Jenna Ellis Tonight. Jenna has the night off. I'm Ken Rosato. While we're still talking about this past weekend's assassination attempt of former President Trump, U.S. intelligence agencies are now reporting that the country of Iran was plotting to assassinate Trump as well. This apparently in response to President Trump's ordered killing of Qasem Soleimani, a man who is responsible for the deaths of thousands of Americans, or at least hundreds that we know of, and thousands more in terms of injuries. And it was considered the single most powerful operative in the Middle East. Here to talk about it is former Texas GOP chair, former U.S. Congressman from Florida, and host of Steadfast and Loyal podcast, Alan West. Alan, it's so good to have you on today.
Thanks so much for having me, Ken. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And for those who may not remember, you served in both Kuwait and Iraq. You retired from the U.S. Army as a lieutenant colonel, so you have more than your share of military experience as well. The Secret Service is saying that they had knowledge of the Iranian plot, and because of that, they actually increased the number of agents protecting former President Trump at his rally on Saturday. Can you imagine if they had not increased the number of agents there?
Yeah, I mean, what I see them saying is basically this is an immense failure, that they increased the amount of agents or, personnel that they had there, but still somehow someone was able to get within 150 yards, direct line of sight to a former president and a presidential nominee. That's unconscionable. And one of the things that we say in the military is that you always have to seize and hold the high ground, which means you never allow your adversary to get an elevated vantage point or position. Well, the fact that you had a rooftop, which again, direct line of sight to President Trump, that was uncovered, if you had additional agents there, why was that rooftop left uncovered? And when you listen to the excuse of Secret Service Director Cheadle, who says that there was a slope to the roof and we were concerned about the safety of our agents, well, this 20-year-old was not concerned about climbing up on that roof. And I believe there was anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes when people were warning about him being up there, but yet no one engaged him.
So specifically in this segment, we want to focus a little bit more on the Iranian plot, because I want to definitely hit you more on the assassination attempt over the weekend. But in the Iranian plot, it's said to be in response to President Trump's ordering of the assassination of Iranian Major General Qasem Soleimani. He was considered one of the most ruthless, one of the most powerful military leaders in the Middle East. He's a man responsible for the deaths of hundreds of American and coalition service members. He also is responsible for wounding thousands more. He was just a bad guy. And a number of people who were with him, military people, were also killed, a number injured as well. Should U.S. intelligence have always been assuming that Iran would be looking to retaliate? It seems that they always have a long game, and we tend to play the short game. And would Iran have been in the financial state to retaliate if the U.S. was still the largest exporter of oil, thus keeping Iran broke? Iran was literally financially in the hole when President Trump was president, and now they are doing very well. They have billions in oil money.
No, you're absolutely right. And President Trump and his policies toward Iran with the sanctions and also our energy independence had rendered Iran bankrupt. And as a matter of fact, when you look at groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, they were basically out having to conduct lemonade stands and bake sales to try to raise money. Now, thanks to the Biden administration, Iran is flush with tens of billions of dollars, and they are once again exporting their terrorism, and to include exporting drones over to Russia to attack Ukraine. So this squarely lays at the feet of the Biden administration. And the intelligence agencies, they should have been tracking this. I mean, Iran does play a long ball game. But if you recall, Ken, going back, the leftist media attacked Donald Trump for going after and killing Soleimani, who was in violations of a United Nations mandate. He was not supposed to be operating outside of the country of Iran. And you're right, he had the blood of Americans on his hands by way of the explosive force penetrators, which caused an incredible amount of death and maiming to our troops there. So we need to keep the pressure on Iran, something that this administration has not done. And we should not have them in a position making any threats whatsoever against any American.
Well, what's amazing is so many people on the left do not see the association between something like having a positive and strong energy policy in the United States, drilling for oil, fracking for oil, and the direct connection with our national security. People don't put two and two together. They're so worried about the environment. The Biden administration calling the environment the biggest security threat that we have, but yet letting countries like Iran and Russia produce more oil than us, thus making more money, thus enriching their coffers and being able to build more military equipment. They don't see that there is a step-by-step correlation. You allow them to get more money. They don't spend their money on their people. There are plenty of people in Iran and Russia living well below the poverty line. They take that money and they build military equipment. They supercharge their military. So the rest of the world is not so environmentally conscious as we sit back and allow them to outpace us with production of oil. And there is the direct cause of our oil output and bankrupting countries like Iran and Russia.
No, you're absolutely right. National security is part of our energy security, which is part of our economic security. And this administration does not understand that. You think about what is happening right now in our hemisphere when you have China building military posts and listening posts right there 90 miles off the coast of Florida and Cuba. The fact that Russia has had naval vessels, to include a nuclear submarine, make ports of call in Cuba. And also we have to be very concerned about Iran and the Hezbollah influence and collusion and coordination with Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. And all of this is occurring while we have this open, porous border. So we're basically saying to Iran, by way of Hezbollah and some of these other terrorist proxies, just come right on into the United States of America. And FBI Director Christopher Wray has said that we do have terrorist cells that are forming here in the United States of America. So you're correct. The ability to put a kibosh on people like Iran, the #1 state sponsor of Islamic terrorism, by way of your own energy security policies, will enhance your national security policies.
Yeah, there is no way Iran would have had the military might, certainly, and the money, probably the chutzpah, if we could borrow the term, the Yiddish term, to back the terrorists in Gaza to invade Israel if they didn't have all the additional billions in oil money. So again, a direct consequence of us laying back and letting other countries take over the oil reins. You know, just because we pulled back on the production of oil doesn't mean somebody else isn't going to step it up. So by us pulling back, all we did was open up the gateway for other countries like Russia and Iran to produce more oil, thus make more money, thus do terrible things, nefarious things with that money versus the United States. We have about 10 seconds left. Your comment on that?
No, you're absolutely right. Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Houthis, none of them would be in the position that they're in. And again, Iran is selling their oil to China. Russia is pushing their natural gas. All of those things we could undermine if we had the right energy policies.
All right, we're not going to let you go just yet. So Alan West, please stand by. Alan West, former Texas GOP chair, host of Steadfast and Loyal podcast. Stick around. We're going to talk to you in just a few. And when this special Republican National Convention edition of Jenna Ellis Tonight continues, Auron MacIntyre of The Blaze will return. He'll talk to us about tonight's RNC theme. The big theme tonight is Make America Strong Once Again. And we will certainly go live to Vice Presidential candidate J.C. Vance when he takes the stage. He's going to be giving his acceptance speech tonight in front of tens of thousands of people. They're live, and millions more in the U.S. and around the world. Jenna Ellis tonight here on Salem News Channel. Coming right back after this. Don't go away.
My fellow Americans, we are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been an absolute disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a consistent issue, and high interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market. There have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East that have the potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even amid the tensions. There are so many reasons that Americans just like you and me should consider investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero hassle, education first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. Go to legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com to download their free gold investing guide. I've read it, and there is so much valuable information there. Friends, now is not the time to roll the dice with your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that gold offers you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals today and tell them that I sent you.
The Republican National Convention continues in Milwaukee. Ohio Senator and Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance expected to speak about trade and immigration. And of course, he will accept his party's nomination to be vice president. When he does, we will certainly carry his speech live here on Salem News Channel. Well, tonight's convention theme, Make America Strong Once Again. Delegates and viewers hear arguments that President Biden is a weak and failed commander-in-chief. Joining us once again is Auron MacIntyre of The Blaze. Auron, when former President Trump was in the White House, the world was basically at peace. Since leaving office, Russia pushed further into Ukraine, where the war has escalated. The Palestinians crossed the border into Israel, slaughtering innocents in their sleep, provoking the current war with Gaza, or in Gaza. North Korea is making noise once again. China is rattling its sword, and Iran is supplying the Middle East with loads of weapons of terror. So the question right now is, what do we do in order to reel things in? If President Trump is elected back to the White House, do you think he'll be able to reel things in and bring back peace?
I think Trump has the record to show that he is willing to go ahead and bring these kind of conflicts under control. Obviously, simply having someone who is competent in the White House, someone who is capable of, I don't know, putting together a few sentences without a teleprompter or without kind of falling asleep at the podium certainly helps quite a bit when it comes to projecting a powerful situation. But of course, Trump has also been somebody who has been successful in peace negotiations. He's somebody who has proven himself as capable of setting up important Middle Eastern peace deals. And he is someone who has kept people like Vladimir Putin at bay. He also understands that the job of the United States is not to just run innocent Ukrainian men into a meat grinder until there's no humans left in that country. I think overall he'll be a much better pick for the United States.
Well, again, tonight's convention theme is Make America Strong Once Again. And when Trump was president, one of the things that America was strong in fact, the world leader in, was energy production. Iran was once on the verge of bankruptcy. Now they're propped up with billions in oil money since our domestic oil program was cut by President Biden. Biden loves to say, we're producing more barrels of oil today than we were under Trump. Yeah, but the rest of the world is outproducing us. So as we may have gone up a tiny hair since Trump left, the rest of the world went up a lot. So they're outproducing us significantly. So we're just somewhere in the middle of the pack. We're no longer the leader. We used to be a net exporter, and we're no longer in that position. So the world is literally ignited into a very unsafe place since Biden is in office and Iran seems to be back in power. Do you think at this point that the energy industry can just pick up and bring us back into the state that we were in?
Well, this is always the trouble of putting an industry like that on the back burner is, like you said, it does take time to go ahead and spin these things back up, to acquire leases, to make sure machinery is in place. This is not something that you simply switch on and switch off, but that's why you need a constant policy of strength. And I'm sure that one of Trump's top priorities will be getting that machinery in place. Oil is, of course, a global commodity. It's something whose price is constantly impacted by production and consumption. And when you take a country like the United States and you go ahead and take them off the board when it comes to production, you naturally embolden the countries that use their oil as a point of leverage against the United States and other nations. Russia obviously famously had a significant advantage, even though we were supposed to be crushing their currency after all of the embargoes during the war. Their ability to go ahead and wield oil as a weapon certainly put them in a much better position. If the United States continues to deny that it needs domestic oil production, obviously it's going to end up in scenarios like the ones we find ourselves in now.
Auron MacIntyre of The Blaze, I can't thank you enough for being with us. Have a wonderful night and enjoy the rest of the convention. And when the special Republican National Convention edition of Jenna Ellis and I continues, we will have more on the weekend assassination attempt of former President Trump. And of course, we will go live to Vice Presidential candidate J.C. Vance when he takes the stage to give his acceptance speech tonight. We'll have that plus much more coming up tonight. It's a special edition of Jenna Ellis Tonight on this, the Republican National Convention night, right here on Salem News Channel. Don't go away. We are coming right back. And welcome back to a special Republican National Convention edition of Jenna Ellis Tonight. Jenna has the night off. I'm Ken Rosato. The Republican National Convention continues in Milwaukee, and Ohio Senator and Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance is expected to speak about trade and immigration. And of course, he'll accept his party's nomination to be vice president. When he does, we will carry his speech live here on Salem News Channel. And of course, fresh on everybody's mind still is this past weekend's assassination attempt of former President Trump. It seems with each passing day, we learn more about the failed assassin, but questions keep mounting. Joining us once again is Allen West, former Texas GOP chair, former U.S. Congressman from Florida, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, and host of Steadfast and Loyal podcast. Thank you so much for returning, Allen. There are so many questions about how the assassination attempt could have happened this weekend. So the U.S. Secret Service has a budget of $3 billion a year. Their primary job is, of course, to protect the presidents, both current and past, and vice presidents and their respective families, and any major candidates for the presidency. And I know hindsight is 20/20, of course. But how could things go so wrong? How could there be so many glaring mistakes? How is it possible that a building just 150 yards away from where the former president was speaking could have gone unguarded? And then when police are alerted to a gunman on the roof, anywhere from 2 to 30 minutes, depending on who you hear from, 2 to 30 minutes pass with nothing being done. It just raises so many questions.
Yeah, Ken, this is absolutely unconscionable, and without a doubt, it is a clear evidence of a level of incompetence that, I cannot understand. And, one of the things that I want people to realize is that in the basic training for our United States servicemen and women, they have to train out to engage a target with a rifle at 300 yards. But yet here we had less than 150 yards, someone with a direct line of sight to the president. And, I'm still a pretty good shot with my AR style rifles. I could have made a shot like that with hard sights. Now, how is it that someone was able to get on a elevated vantage point and even have the alert of people, we've seen the video of individuals around saying that there's someone on the roof? Those counter sniper teams should have done their range and sector cards. They should have done everything to compute their windage and target reference points and know all the distances to those respective vantage points that they had in their purview. And as soon as someone had gotten up on that roof, they should have made a call to confirm or deny that that person was a friendly. The fact that this individual was able to get off 6 to 8 shots before he was engaged, that is highly troubling, and that calls into question what were the engagement rules, the rules of engagement, and the proper protocols and procedures.
And you're speaking about rules of engagement. There was one report that one of the sharpshooters, the Secret Service sharpshooters, apparently had the shooter in the scope, but was told to stand down, don't fire. And of course, once the attempt, or the attempted assassin, we can say thankfully, once the attempted assassin fired off the shots, that's when the return fire occurred. But that's not the point. The point is you're supposed to prevent that from happening to begin with. Should the person who said stand down, should that person be held accountable for this?
Well, they should be identified and they should be held accountable. And we need to go back and look at what were the directions and guidance that were given to those counter sniper teams. Look, having been in combat, I remember the insidious rules of engagements that said that we could not engage enemy soldiers unless we were fired upon. It's very simple. In a firefight, in the first 2 to 3 seconds, someone's going to lose their life. And I would rather that person being the enemy, my adversary, than my own troops. And so it is very important that you are proactive and you have rules of engagement that allow for that proaction instead of sitting back and being reactive, which could have cost the life of the former president, but it did cost the life of a 50-year-old gentleman that was there to enjoy his First Amendment rights, and also 2 other individuals that were there and they were severely wounded. So we cannot dismiss this and we cannot just poo-poo it away. Furthermore, Ken, there's a report that there was a law enforcement agent that went up on that roof, saw the shooter, but for whatever reason did not engage.
That's unbelievable. And the idea that there may not have been a comms channel so that the local police could have communicated directly with Secret Service. How this all happens, considering the budget they have, is just unforgivable. And Secret Service head Kimberly Cheadle said in an interview that the buck stops with her, but that she has no plans on stepping down. Well, what happened to the day when somebody said, I take full responsibility, and then you resign? What's the point of saying I take full responsibility and doing nothing? Then those words are hollow. They're useless.
Well, this is what you have seen throughout the entire Biden administration. Let's not forget the debacle in Afghanistan, where 13 Marines, a soldier, sailor, they lost their lives. And Joe Biden says that it was a great operation that he conducted. And yet to this point, no general, no Department of Defense official has lost their job. And so this is a continuation. And again, how could you not have rehearsed this operation? How could you not have sat down and gone through a walk of that terrain? I don't care what was inside or outside the security perimeter. You have to be looking at any vantage point that can bring an individual to give them the ability to do exactly what that 20-year-old did. And you have to cover it. There cannot be any dead space. There should not be any elevated vantage point that is uncovered. But all of those things happen. And again, we saw the video of this shooter being identified by civilians, but yet there was no action taken. Too many questions are surrounding this.
And among the things that we've now heard is one report that the First Lady, the current First Lady, Jill Biden, apparently decided at the last minute she was going to speak within 40 miles or so of former President Trump's rally, I guess to kind of distract the news from only covering former President Trump, but that apparently Secret Service had to quickly divert some of its people to her gathering so that she could be protected. And then at the same time, they ended up bringing on some freelancers, some part-timers. I didn't know there was such a thing as a freelance Secret Service agent. These were apparently agents who work for other departments, FBI, et cetera, who then freelanced for the day, or people who are maybe half retired who got paid for the day to come in and protect the president. But when you have a situation like that, people who aren't used to working together and getting the commands and working as a united group, this is possibly what could lead to an event like this.
You're absolutely right. You should not have some ad hoc security detail when it comes to safeguarding the life of a former president and a presidential nominee. And furthermore, when you look and understand the fact that, President Trump is about 6'2", 6'3", and we saw in those clips where you had agents that were 5'4", that's not covering the president. No one is supposed to be able to see the president. And, if there had been a second shooter, think about this. That second shooter could have been able to get off, shots against President Trump. God bless him for standing up and pumping his fists and shouting words, fight, fight, fight. But once again, he exposed himself to any incoming fire as well. And so there are so many things that were just, like I said, a cacophony of failures, and someone needs to be held accountable.
Well, I saw two of the female Secret Service agents with long ponytails, which I thought right there, I mean, that could pose, we get in the way, certainly if you're in a fight, hand-to-hand combat with somebody, but that's neither here nor there. I don't know what the rules about having a long ponytail are. And not to say that there aren't great qualified women who could be in Secret Service. I worked with a woman who was in security, armed security, former NYPD, dressed just like Secret Service. And I know she would take me down in a heartbeat. And she's a good foot shorter than me. I worked with her when I was at ABC. But the bottom line is, that these people, you're right, these people can't just stick their hands up. One of these Secret Service agents, literally, as the president was putting his fist in the air, she just stuck her hand up in the air to kind of protect them. Well, that hand will do nothing to prevent an AR-15 style bullet coming at him full speed. We have about 10 seconds left. What do you think they could do differently in the future?
Well, without a doubt, they need to rehearse their operations. They need to rehearse all their communications channels and links. And you cannot have this ad hoc security mentality. You have to have top-notch professionals when you're talking about a former president.
Alan West, former Texas GOP chair, host of Steadfast and Loyal podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. When we return, some closing thoughts on the Republican National Convention. We'll talk about the various themes of each night and how they have real impact on the American people, why those themes matter, and how they connect with Americans of all different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and different financial situations. That and more on this special Republican National Convention edition of Jenna Ellis Tonight. I'm Ken Rosato, sitting in for Jenna. We're coming right back here on Salem News Channel. Don't go away. And welcome back to a special Republican National Convention edition of Jenna Ellis Tonight. Jenna has the night off. I'm Ken Rosato. The Republican National Convention in Milwaukee has been structured with a different theme each night. The themes are simple and straightforward. They connect directly with the American people because they are real issues that impact all Americans, no matter who they are, no matter what their background. On Monday, the theme was Make America Wealthy once again. What person doesn't want to be wealthy and catch up financially? The Biden administration likes to talk about a decrease in inflation when the truth is inflation is still rising. It's just the amount of inflation rising that is gradually ticking down. The bottom line is the cost of groceries is up nearly 30% since Biden took office. That while the average wage has barely crept up at all. So real Americans are really feeling it in the pocketbook. People are putting groceries and things like gas on their credit cards at an extraordinary rate. So many people look for a side hustle, a part-time job to make extra money to keep up with that huge amount of inflation. So what does the Biden administration do? They say, look at all the new side hustles as look at all the new jobs that they created. No, most of the jobs they say they created are just people returning to work after the pandemic and government jobs that they created. Who can't do that with the stroke of a pen? Creating government jobs as the government is already trillions in debt. Biden either intentionally doesn't talk about or may not even realize because of his handlers that so many Americans are working two jobs now. That's why it looks like there are so many jobs created. They are part-time jobs, not full-time careers. People are working harder and longer than ever and making less than ever before, which is why so many are so willing to listen to President Trump's message of prosperity. Hey, maybe a billionaire knows a thing or two about making money, right? He did bring us into prosperity once before. Why not a repeat? Night 2 talked about making America safe once again. They featured speaker after speaker talking about how their children were killed by fentanyl that was brought into this country by illegal migrants and drug gangs, as the Biden administration has kept the borders wide open. Upwards of 12 million illegal migrants have entered the U.S. under Biden's watch, and we have no idea where they are, who they are, which are good, which are criminals. Venezuela's leaders actually right now are openly bragging on radio stations in Venezuela that they opened their prisons and their insane asylums and sent those people to our border, saving them lots of money and hassle. Yet mainstream media here in the United States won't even look into it. They have that old saying, that when that enemy tells you their plan, what they plan on doing, you should listen to your enemy because they probably will do what they say. Most illegal migrants may be here just to make a buck. or to seek a better life. They're probably very, very good people, but we don't know for sure. And until we know who everyone is and why they're here, isn't it just smarter to just close the border and figure it out first? Real Americans are being raped and killed. These are real people, not adages, not stories. We have no obligation to let anyone into this country except those whom we choose to let in. And we don't need new laws to do this. There are currently 175 immigration laws on the books that work just fine for us. They worked for hundreds of years. The fact that the Biden administration is asking for immigration reform is nothing more than a ruse. The bill that was put before Congress would have only admitted more illegals in. It would have done nothing to fix the current problem. Tonight's theme is Make America Strong once again. The Republicans will detail all the failures of the Biden administration, resulting in wars around the world that simply did not exist under Trump. The failure of the exit that we had from Afghanistan, the war in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, China's sword rattling to invade Taiwan, Iran financing terror, and North Korea waking up once again. Of course, J.D. Vance will highlight tonight with his acceptance of the VP nomination for the Republicans. And finally, tomorrow night, the convention wraps up with former President Trump talking about how he plans on making America great once again. He will formally accept his party's nomination for president at a time when the Republicans seem more united than ever and the Democrats more divided. This is something that I certainly can't remember in history. Maybe the last time I could remember something like this happening was in 1984 when President Reagan was running for re-election. That was probably the last time the Republicans sort of had their act together. Well, stick around. It looks like this will certainly be a fascinating ride. We still have months to go, amazingly. Heck, the Democrats don't even know for sure who their nominee will be. All sorts of rumors still working that the Democrats may end up picking somebody else to run for the office of president before the Democratic National Convention comes up in the weeks ahead. Well, that does it for this special Republican National Convention edition of Jenna Ellis Tonight. I'm Ken Rosato sitting in for Jenna. Decision 24 continues on Salem News Channel. We'll be back in a moment with live coverage of the RNC convention in Milwaukee, Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance's acceptance speech, and a panel of experts to talk about it. So join me in just a moment for more of Decision 24 on Salem News Channel.